There you go. Okay, welcome everybody here at the University of Illinois at Chicago at the Daily Library and the online folks who are joining us from all over. So it's really cool to see the chat, everybody who's joining us. Before we start, and this is really about creating a dialogue, I just wanted to explain what is the MediaEd Research Jam and why we chose that specific name. Renee, can you move the next slide? The idea was to create really a dialogue, slide number 5. No, go slide number 5. Yes. To create a dialogue between different researchers, practitioners, and that's why we call it the jam, because really it's about, it's not like an academic conference about sharing the research that you did. It's actually about what's happening right now and what research you would like to do. And that's why we want to do a dialogue, getting from everybody's experience. Now, we want to really think about the impact and what's happening right now in our classroom. There is so many different challenges that we're going to have time to discuss. So we want to think about how do we create this dialogue that is really addressing what's happening in our teaching and other people's teaching that we can help with. And the last thing is really about the collaboration, and I cannot emphasize it more. What we were thinking here in organizing it is that by the end of the day and a half in Chicago, but by the end of this session, and there's another session later today, we're going to have people that will find their, I don't know if you call it birds of a feather, or their mind-like folks to collaborate with, and to think like, yes, that I'm really, really passionate about this topic, and I really want to collaborate with this group of folks to work on that. So that's really the goals, is to open a dialogue, then think about the impact we want to have, and then find the people that we want to work with them to get to that impact. So that's, I want just to set up the stage for that. So next slide is just the title of this session. And as much as each one of us has a lot to say about what's happening right now in the US media education, in higher education, and there's a lot on a daily basis that is happening, we thought that the best way to do it, in the way that we do it at the Media Education Lab, so then you can go to the next slide, is the power of 2. So I just was thinking that 2 years ago, Renee took this selfie, so just to explain to you here. That was in my graduation when I got my PhD at the University of Rhode Island. Renee was my advisor, and so that was like celebrating like with taking a selfie. So we have been in a dialogue for quite a while about what we think, needs to happen and how to happen. But in order to make it a little bit more structured, we are going to go over those 6 questions to basically model how the next activity will be. And so Renee will interview me, I'll interview Renee. We're going to go over those questions. Once we're done, it's going to be on you to be in a dialogue. So basically, in the online, you'll be in breakout rooms with a diet partner, and here you'll be basically with the person next to you. So each 2 pairs will basically share their answers to those questions. And then we'll come back as a forum. So the in-person will be in-person, the forum, and the online will have their forum online. So before we start, any questions or just clarification that we know the agenda and what we're doing here? Make sense? Okay. Okay. So Renee, up to you to move to the second slide and start.
Okay, I think we're going to have a great conversation, Yanti, and then this will set up the conversation for folks to have in their small groups. Okay, so what are your definitions of media literacy? Yanti.
Okay, so first of all, I must say, I know it will sound weird, but I'm coming from Israel. In Hebrew, they invented a term for media literacy, but I still don't get what it is really. So for me, I always understood what media education is. That's why I came to work, and be part of the Media Education Lab. And then I heard several years ago, and that clicked to me, oh, that's what media literacy is. That media literacy is the outcome of media education. Once I heard that sentence, I'm like, okay, now I understand what is media literacy. So basically, through the process of learning about media, creating media, sharing, understanding social implication, then you become media literate, which means that you're more aware, you understand the fluency, you're a critical thinker, you are more socially responsible, and you know how to reflect on your own and others, like in that impact. So it's not a very organized definition, but it took me that process to understand for myself what is media literacy. But Renee, you've been quite a while in the field, and part of the definition have been like papers that you did and struggle and debates over it. So what is your definition?
My definition, well, I think I want to start by just saying, one thing for sure, media literacy is a moving target. It changes in response to changes in technology, culture, and society. So that means we're always redefining media literacy. And that's like, a lot of people are confused by that, but it's like, that is just the nature of the beast. So media literacy is responsive to changes in media, culture, and society. I do like the learning spiral that Paulo Freire gave to us, right? Access, analyze, create, reflect, act. That at the heart of that Freirean spiral is the process of inquiry. So I often define media literacy as a process of asking critical questions about media, culture, and society. I think, for me, the practice of literacy, the social practice of literacy, and especially of writing, has really led me to put a strong emphasis on media literacy as a composition practice of writing. And now that we're using AI and generative AI tools, of course, we're finding ways to figure out what kind of knowledge do you need about platforms in order to, participate in culture. And so I do think that I used to think knowledge was not such a critical feature of media literacy, but I'm now starting to appreciate that knowledge about media systems and society is important for media literacy. So there you go. All right, now it's my turn, Yanti. I get to ask you the second question. How are changes in the landscape now affecting the practice of media literacy?
So the way I see it, and I'm totally biased because I edited a book about post-COVID and the post-pandemic practices, but it was more a historical way to look at what happened during the pandemic. And I think that although we're celebrating, in quotation mark, 5 years, which is unbelievable to think about, that the quarantine happened like 5 years ago, we're still looking at the impact and it's still impacting us. I can see that my students, their social interaction, their social intelligence, the way what they're bringing into the classroom from the over media use and the lack of some social is impacting. And I think even politically, what is happening now, different wars, conflict, the backlash over, again, woke agenda is still part of people being so frustrated with being quarantined and not having agency during a pandemic that nobody had control over, and trying to get control over something that they tried to get. So I think we're experiencing it right now still, this thing, and it's impacting us and we're not addressing. And that's why I changed, for example, in my class, that I put media impact and media addiction from at the end of my class into the beginning of the class, because I want to set up the stage and like, this is the state where we are. We actually are not out of the impact of the pandemic yet. That's but how do you experience it?
I think that is fascinating, and that's probably why what we sometimes call the socio-emotional turn in media literacy is so important. And so I would say another feature of the landscape now is the growing sort of personalization. The role of algorithmic personalization means that, my Google is not your Google. My Netflix is not your Netflix, right? And that the idea of media serving as cultural glue or creating opportunities for common ground is kind of it's a quaint idea, really. I'm continually surprised that you've not heard of my favorite influencers or my favorite opinion columnists. But that reality of the extreme personalization of people's media and technology use has a huge impact on what choices instructors make in the classroom or how students are empowered to share their lived experience with media. So I would say we're still trying to figure out how pedagogy needs to be responsive to the fragmentation and personalization of our experience using media and technology. Okay, next question. Now, I guess I want to make a meta comment here. Notice how Yanti and I are sticking with the protocol. We're not getting into side conversation. I'm not letting Yanti respond to my point or do anything like that. We're literally following the protocol. We think there's a lot of value to that. And then there'll be space at the end where we can draw some connections or ask some questions. So here's your next question, Yanti. How are the core values of media literacy challenged in the current political climate?
So I'll tap into what you say. Some people know about me, some people less, that I'm like, one of my research aspect is empathy. And for me, the aspect for me to come to media literacy as a value is about the social connectedness and how media can actually connect. Because of my work like 25 years ago in Jaffa in Israel, like working with Arab and Jewish students when I was a film major, and I saw the power of media to connect, and I was shocked and couldn't understand it. And that's why I'm researching it, and that's why it's interests me. And so seeing what's happening right now in the political climate, exactly what you just talked about the polarization, is the exact opposite of what I've been experiencing and what I've been, working on. So I see that for me, the core value of connectedness through media is being challenged with this polarization of like, no, it's my media, no, you don't understand, no, it's my thing, it's not. And not having like a common ground, understanding like how to compromise and how to really socialize, like using actually media as an extension of our human being, but not from hate, but from actually compassion and empathy. So that's been challenged on my opinion.
Wow. Okay, yeah, I would agree with that. And let me just say that the core values of media literacy are being challenged in the current political climate because of the fear that has been intentionally created by the current administration, and especially around issues of representation and identity. And of course, it's very hard to teach media literacy without a strong focus on representation and identity. And so, the rise of fake news created challenges for teachers who would find themselves getting, slapped if they used the New York Times as a source or CNN instead of Fox News or Breitbart. And so this idea about what is truth has really been destabilizing. And now on top of that, the sort of fear around talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we've got a lot of fear about how the core concepts and big ideas of media literacy can be taught in the current political climate. It's a big topic.
Yes.
All right. So how are you teaching media literacy in a polarized world, Yanti?
So I always brag about my students being so diverse that they have, different background, they're coming. But I think it was 3 years ago when I had one student who told me that she feels very uncomfortable. She was from Florida, and she didn't see herself as a conservative or a Republican, but she felt that all the opinions, like in the class, were so much like even more kind of left, like extreme left. And I realized that the diversity in my class is maybe in a lot of aspects, but politically not so much. And it was my kind of biases that it took me time to realize that as much as I'm like celebrating diversity, it's an issue with like polarization. And when I'm raising and doing devil's advocate and trying to raise like conservative point of view, it's getting backlashed and not very kind of appreciative. And again, in a way I can understand it, but the dialogue that I'm creating about gender, about race, about class, is not happening in the political, and the polarization that we're experiencing right now is more political than anything else. And so that's where like it's getting really, really challenging in like how do I teach media literacy in that sense? Because everything else like works and they're, you know, getting the practices, and we'll talk about those practices, but from a political standpoint, to really try, again, from an empathic kind of exercise, to get into somebody who thinks politically like, so for Republicans to think like Democrat, for Democrats to think like Republican, or conservative liberals, oof, that's on the verge of impassable. And that's something that I'm struggling. I would like to figure out what we can do there.
Wow. So I'm going to answer this question in a slightly different way, because there's a polarization, there's a type of polarization that I'm experiencing with my undergraduate students that has to do with gender, right? My female students and my male students are living in different media worlds, consuming different kind of media, and there's a set of values and ideologies that are embedded in those media that my students are surrounded with. And so I'm definitely aware that my own gender identity affects the way I consume media and the way I find pleasure in media, and that I'm really aware of the limitations of how I teach media literacy because like I do practically nothing on video games. I do practically nothing. I have a little tiny thing on pornography, right? Porn literacy, right? I have a little tiny moment in time where we address a gambling and gaming related to sports betting, which is a very big thing with my students. So I'm trying to figure out how to put boys and girls together to talk about these topics. But so far I've just been experimenting, and I can't say that I'm successful, but I'm aware that there's one kind of polarization that's coming from our gender identities that we need more opportunities for a crosstalk. Okay. What patterns are you noticing about the intersection of students' digital skills and their critical thinking skills? Yanti?
So it's fascinating because we always think, they don't know like media literacy, they don't know. And when I'm talking about, I have a class about privacy, I have them share their privacy settings and their privacy like way and account. And I found them a lot of the time very, very savvy about that. But then suddenly we're going to like other things, and then they're totally not thinking about their privacy, or technically like they know how to upload like a video on TikTok, but then we're talking about like editing it or understanding transitions or like and then suddenly it's like, oh, that's something, can you teach us? Or I don't know how to do it, I don't know. Like, okay, they can get into the Wi-Fi, but suddenly like using a different browser kind of those kind of things that are more on the technical side of it becomes like, so there is a gap that I cannot identify to say they're very savvy on this and they're not savvy. It's like, I just see those inconsistencies and I kind of cannot make sense of it. How are you so savvy in this part and then totally not paying attention about like what's happening here and how that's going on? And it's not between digital skill and critical skill, it's within digital skills and within critical skills that there's those gaps, which again, confirmation bias, or we can call it in different ways, but it's just astonishing as an educator that I cannot put like the finger on it and know how to address it exactly.
I could totally relate to that. I'm going to, in answering this question, I'm going to compare and contrast two types of students that I work with. I work with undergraduate students, right? And I work with graduate students who are grown-ups, right? Adult learners, shall we say. And one thing I notice about adult learners is file management. Holy shit. My students can't find anything. They created it and then it disappears, right? They made it at somewhere, they can't figure it out. So file management skills definitely seem to be a big gap. And for a long time, I didn't think I needed to take responsibility for that. Like, that's your problem, buddy. But now I realize it's so bad that it's like, actually, I try to show and demonstrate, here's how I organize. You know, how do you think I juggle 10 projects, right? Well, let me show you. And here's how it's easy. I never have trouble finding anything because here's how I do it. So I try to model file management practices where my adult learners. With my undergraduate students, they have their skills vary just the same way you described, Yanti. It's a very eclectic pattern of skills. I think their skills are lower than I expect. Many of my students have, before they take a class with me, they've never made a video, they never made a podcast, they never, created a piece of multimedia. All my students this semester are creating digital portfolios. They've never posted any of their college work online, which is shocking to me. Shocking. But the thing that I do notice that they're very, very good at is, man, can my undergraduate students curate memes and GIFs to make some very sophisticated rhetorical statements. They can communicate complex ideas using using the artifacts of everyday social media visual life, memes and GIFs. And it's just breathtaking to see how they do that and how much fun they have doing that. All right, this is, I think, almost the last question, right? What's working, Yanti? What's working? What instructional strategies are you using when it comes to media literacy that your students respond best to, and why?
I love that question because it makes me very cynical and kind of, reflect on myself and my own kind of because usually I would teach the way that I was taught, and going through the Israeli educational system and higher educational system, it's very Socratic in the sense of like having debates and arguing about like a topic, but it's very based on written and spoken basically, and that's what I brought to my teaching, and I was exposed to universal design for learning to try to diversify the way that I'm presenting information and I'm asking my students. And that really changed the way that I approach the instructional strategy. Suddenly, it's like, okay, I want to see that you have the knowledge, not necessarily that you know how to write. I'm not a writing. I definitely, as everybody around me knows, I'm not the best writer. So it's about how do you articulate your argument? And if you do it as a podcast, if you do it as a video. I have a student yesterday asked me if she can produce songs. I said, cool, sure, yeah, like, let's see it. And so they might do an album from the class in media literacy. I had the student did a graphic novel. So that's cool, but that's really put me out of my comfort zone. But then this semester, that's really topped like everything else. And because the students, I blame No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top and the kind of they asked for quizzes and exam. Like when I opened up, like how would you like? And I would never when I do my own multiple questions, I created them and I test myself, I always get it wrong. And it's my own test. I'm so bad at multiple answers. But they love it and they really appreciate and come to me and say like, we love that there is this option. I have 42 students. I give them the option either to write or record their own reflection about class or to take the quiz. I would never take the quiz. I have only 2 people every week that send me a reflection as a recording or as a written. Everybody else is doing the quiz. And I'm like, really? But that works, I guess, for them. So that's something that makes me feel horrible. And that's when I'm saying I'm cynic, but it works. So I'm like, okay, I guess either I'm old or it's a different kind of way of thinking.
How wonderful. That's a great story. So I want to share with you one instructional strategy that my undergraduate students and my graduate students respond to beautifully, and that is the memoir. Writing a memoir or making a multimedia memoir is a important part of both my undergraduate media literacy class and my graduate media literacy class. And I am actually, I think I need to think more deeply. I want to think more deeply about why it is such a powerful instructional strategy. I'm increasingly aware of how much reflection and metacognition are part of media literacy. And so basically thinking about your thinking and thinking about your identity is part of the practice of getting that heightened consciousness that media literacy emphasizes. I'm also aware that students are living through a period of rapid transformation in the way they used media. Even my 19-year-olds, the way they write about when they were 11 is like things have changed a lot in the 10 years that that 10-year period. And so they're absolutely open to acknowledging that a rapid rate of change is destabilizing for relationships, for social systems, for economies, for regulation and regulatory things. And so it's weird how, back in my day, we used to say the personal is political, right? But that is still true as it always was. And now I think the memoir gives students an opportunity to think about the personal as political. All right, so Yanti, we've just modeled what you can do well, we did it in about 20 minutes, didn't we? Yes. So we're going to, we've got 18 people in the online group here. We're going to break into groups, into small groups, and we're going to model that practice. And Yanti, you're going to do something like that in the Chicago setting. So we're going to wave goodbye to the Chicago. Is that true? We're going to wave goodbye to the Chicago folks, right?
Yeah, so we'll see all of you as the gallery. Let me generate a second. I'll just change the camera so you can actually see all of us here. Everybody
then we can wave. Oh, isn't that cool? There you go. So there we have
Thank you so much.
We had a hybrid experience. We'll see you on the other side. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Okay, so online folks, you stay with me for just a minute. Let's do a introduce yourself with the I noticed, I wondered, I liked, right? So if you're here, we want to go around the room and introduce ourselves with just a brief identity check. So we'll start with you, Barbara. Name and location.
I'm in Ithaca, New York.
Cindy.
I'm also in Ithaca, New York. Project Lookshard.
Neha.
Hello, Cindy. Hello, hello.
So sweet. I love it. I'm Neha, and I'm in Chicago, Illinois, but I'm not at UIC because life is hard.
Daniel.
Hi, everyone. Dan Krutka. I'm the education advisor to Namely. Based out of Denton, Texas.
Jamie.
Hi, I'm Jamie
Good evening.
Brew. Oh, are there two Jamies?
Cool.
Oh, okay. I'm Jamie Brew in
Good evening.
Chicago, Illinois. Headed to be with the little kindergartners for a minute, so bear with me.
No worries. We're glad you're here. Katie, another fabulous school librarian. Katie.
I am a high school teacher librarian. I'm in here rocking it with them right now. I also run the program for the teacher librarian credential and teach a few of those classes at the university.
We're glad you're here. Moises from Brazil. Introduce yourself, buddy. Oh.
Well, he says
He wrote in
can't
the chat that he can't talk right now.
He can't talk right now. Sean.
Hi, I'm in Chicago as well. I'm at Columbia College.
Happy to have you. Nat.
Hi again, it's me, your Canadian who's always here. So Ontario, Canada. Hello, everyone. I'm a PhD student.
We're glad you're here. Randall.
Yeah, hi Renee. Randall Fujimoto, game-based learning designer in the Los Angeles area.
We're glad you're here. Lucia.
Hello, everyone. Sorry. I'm Lucia from Lusophone University in Portugal.
Because of Zoom, we're an international group. We're not just talking about media literacy in the US, you guys. We're going to talk about it around the world. Thank God. Dr. Anjani. Okay, maybe she is not able to respond. Is there anybody? Aman. Bhavana. Okay, got it. So we may have people who are listening in and participating that way. That's absolutely fine. Come as you are, we say. Come as you are, however you are. That is really, really cool. Listen, what I'm going to try to do now is put the questions in the chat. We're going to break into some small groups and you're going to try the protocol. We're going to try to put 2 or 3 people in a room, right? Because, asking and answering these questions gives you a chance to think more deeply about these issues. And because this is a research jam, we're hoping talking about these issues might inspire you to think about research kinds of activities and projects that will be important for you to do. So I'm going to, hold on here. I have to share how about if I do this? How about if I share the what if I share the whole slide deck with you? Here we go. Anyone with the link can edit, copy link, done. I'm putting this link in the chat because that's where you're going to find all of the questions. So you can open up that slide deck, right? And do just what Yanti and I did with your partner. Move through those questions. But I'm also going to put the questions in the chat because not everybody is going to have access to open that thing up. So here in the chat is those list of questions. So we modeled what we're hoping you're going to do with a partner or in a small group of 3. And we're going to take just 20 minutes to do that. And then when we come back, we're going to do some reflection. We're going to try to call up what surprised us about our conversation or what we found ourselves saying that we really want to remember, right? And write down. And we might even do some note-taking activities here. But for this conversation, it's a great opportunity for you to meet someone and to hear how they're thinking about the challenges of teaching media literacy wherever in the world they're teaching it. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you understand the task at hand. What's going to happen next? You're going to join that small group. You're going to have a great conversation. We're going to take about 20 minutes to do that. If you by any chance end up in a room with no partner, do not sit in silence and suffer. Okay, come back to the main room and we'll put you in a room, right? So I am creating the groups and I am opening the rooms. Woo! All right, we'll see you back here in the main room in about 20 minutes. Hey, Sean, can you move into the small group or not? Oh, yeah, you did. Good.
Hi there.
Hey, Lucia, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So my session was just myself, yes.
Your session was just a session. Oh, that's excellent. So what I'm going to do is, let me see if I can figure this out just a second. You and Sean Andrews, let's see if I can, hold on here. Ooh, ooh, uh-oh. I'm going to move you to room 4. Move to room 4. Are you getting that invitation? Cool.
Yes.
You're going to meet Katie. She's awesome.
Thank you. See you back.
Hi, Renee. I was in my own room.
Oh, you were all by yourself? Oh, that's so sad. I'm going to put you in room 5.
Hey, thank you.
Directly our students and our staff, and just feeling the anxiety and the stress of, can I say that or can I not? And honestly, just now when you said it was recording, I kind of wanted to put everything off because I don't want and I live in a very really privileged space where more than likely it's not going to happen. However, I'm still a little afraid because of the climate at the federal level, particularly. And so just talking about how that's changing the practice, because they want the population to be less educated, and it's a lot easier to manipulate when they are less educated, right? And then how how much we're seeing within our students, and how one of the people in our group, Cindy, she had to leave, was talking about how she's applying for a federal grant, and they had to change media and information literacy in the hopes that it would kind of hide one of the taboo words. And I was like, why are we doing this? This seems like a really strange time. This timeline is, I'm not really sure. Like, are we getting pranked? Like, what's going on?
But I really appreciate your point, though. It is important for us to document what is happening and how people are feeling at this moment in time. Just the same way when COVID happened, we tried to document the pivot that happened and then how we adapted. This time also needs to be something we pay attention to and document. Thank you for sharing. I think we should figure out how to, or I wonder how we could figure out how to do that.
Well, I think it's speaking up and speaking out. Like we have to keep that at top of mind. I think about my previous students. I think about my in-laws in particular, because they don't speak English very well, and just how much media tricks them almost, and how media from around the world is different than the US media, and how that affects their worldview. Anyway, I will let somebody else talk.
I really like that idea. And I wonder about like some kind of risk profile analysis. Like you said, how you feel at risk, because here are the factors in terms of who's in your world, where your privilege is, but where it's limited. I feel like people are experiencing this transition through different risk profiles. And I would like to know, I'd like a chance to reflect on, I feel like I'm at risk too, and I have got some evidence and data to prove it. And I think it'd be really interesting for people to reflect, another reflective media literacy activity, like you said about your relatives and the information worlds they are inhabiting, and that subjects them to some risks, right? Cool. Dan, what was a noteworthy idea in your conversation that was meaningful to you?
We had a good conversation. I mean, we kind of just talked about, the current environment and like the ways things are changing. And for example, we had a discussion of like, as much as some things changed, there's also similarities, right? We were talking about like misinformation as being a problem, and also information overload, right? That there's just so much out there. But then, I was mentioning like, for example, that probably people have felt like that since the telegraph, right? I mean, like since you weren't just in your local community, there's been just a multitude of information to learn, and I know like media scholars have talked about, right? Like, what do you do with hearing about tragedies on the other side of the world that you feel like you don't have a lot of control on? So we just talked about that challenge of like, people being in their little bespoke realities, and like, what do you do when we have such fractured and different media experiences from each other? So I don't know. We went through the array of questions, so there's a lot of different comments, but I think that was one of the interesting things we talked about. And of course, we got into AI too, and right, like the challenges of I said that like students are better at media literacy than I think we give them credit for, but they also think they're better than they are. And they like sometimes are very confident, like, oh, I can tell. And they're just like, we'll look at a video and be like, I can tell. And I'm like, I would probably do a little more searching than that, if I were you, than just your gut, which is of course what the SIFT method and other methods of lateral reading and stuff have been promoting. So we had a good discussion on a range of different topics.
Thanks for sharing. It is really interesting to think about the historical context for this period of rapid change, and how to help students get a more accurate understanding. I gave my students the European Digital Skills Quiz. I made them all take it and then write to me about what score did they get and all of that. And that was good to kind of take them down a notch. They thought they were really good, but they only got 6 out of 10 questions on the digital skills thing. So somehow a more accurate appraisal of their learning needs, and the role of tests is plays a role in that. Moish, what came up in the small group that was meaningful or interesting to you? And now the opportunity for you to make notes on those slides is right there available to you. So I invite you to do that. But let's talk it through. Yeah, Moish.
Oh, I think Ed Moises can only do chat. Yeah, I can only do chat. So he was in our group, and so yeah, I tried to share a little bit, but I'm sure he'll add it.
I got the point, and I put on the chat. because I'm in trouble with the audio. Okay.
I'm looking in the chat here. Thank you so much for that. So Moishes writes, empowerment to recognize new critically and humility. Oh, humility. What an important topic. Yeah, I just finished a research project where I tried to measure intellectual humility because it's been measured now. There's a 6-item scale, a self-report scale, and I found some statistically significant improvements in a way that courageous Rhode Island participants were able to show increased intellectual humility through participating in dialogue and discussion about media technology and society. I think how to teach you, can humility be taught? I don't know. Barbara, what was noteworthy about what happened in the conversation from your point of view? Uh-oh, she's coughing. She's sneezing.
Excuse me. I am healing from being in the hospital for over a month with pneumonia. I think that we discussed how media literacy, how the media outlets are not really providing information to people, that it's not objective. Facts are not objective. So from my perspective, we need to support each other, to get together in community in order to create change. Going back to what I can't remember her name was saying, that was what I feel. And I don't teach, so I basically did a lot of listening to what Scott and Nat were saying. I have created a workshop to give adults tools to decode the news, but Ithaca has not been very receptive to it. So this has been very difficult for me.
I do think that post-truth environment is a really interesting challenge. Yes, reading the New York Times fact checking of the State of the Union speech revealed, the confident liar that he is, but how we teach about that is challenged. So, Katie, are you in a space where you can chat a little bit about those 7 questions and which ones resonated with you, or what's on your mind as you think about the unanswered questions?
Now that's a lot about what's on my mind, but thank you, Renee. I think you got my code. Like if it's camera off, I can't talk, all the awesome. One thing that we brought up that I believe, and I'm sure it's like speaking to the choir here, but like sometimes we don't frame it that way, but the intersectionality of critical thinking as well as social impact. So like being mindful about they're not 2 separate entities. We're doing those simultaneously. And then as far as like teaching things, especially in the States, we're like, oh my gosh, I don't think there's anything that's apolitical anymore, but like trying to get as apolitical as possible to teach the skills before we get into something that's more politically heated, because the emotions are just too out there to even like really try to harness that with the skills. So stepping back with like the lighter lift of the content.
Yeah. That's such an interesting thing that you say, because one of the things that's coming out of this project, this research project that I'm doing with teachers in Massachusetts, is that everyone knows that media literacy can be taught in the before grade 6. Everyone in our community knows that media literacy foundational knowledge and skills can be introduced to children in kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2, but we don't really have a whole lot of scholarship or a whole lot of pedagogy on that. I mean, we've got common sense media, and then what else? Nothing, really, nothing else. So I do feel like
Scott just dropped Faith in the chat, which she's super amazing. Yeah, but
that's right. Faith. But it is interesting to think, could that be a way to address your concerns about teaching the foundational concepts in a way that is not politically risky or polarizing?
With the littles, I always start with the feelings because they got feelings about everything. So if we could like imagine this, a world where kindergartners and first graders, even second graders, they learn that if my emotions are high, I need to pause and think and process. Hell, I'd love that if 50-year-olds had that concept. But like we could get that, just like feelings are fine. They exist and you're going to have them. But what do we do with these big feelings? And that's something that's missing, even with the influx of like PBIS and SEL and all those other acronyms about your feelings. Like we're not really helping kids about like hit pause and breathe a moment, and that's okay.
Wow. Wow. Neha, you're next.
So I absolutely agree, Katie, and I think you are speaking to the choir, because I have always said like kindergarten, if they're using any sort of media, like they're using YouTube, we're reading a book, right? Like they should be learning about media literacy. And I think one of our biggest issues is that we silo media literacy and we don't just incorporate it into the content areas. And we really need to move away from that. We're pushing so many things on teachers and understanding that media literacy is within every single topic. And Jamie and I were talking about this in our group. I also put it in the slides so that we have some capture of what's going on. Jamie, you're welcome to add. I see that you're back on screen, or I can keep babbling.
No, okay, yes, here I am. So, absolutely, Neha. And thank you for putting the Dr. Regal's book in the chat. I just purchased it. So I'm sorry, I'm coming down from kindergarten. Common Sense Media and Dr. Regal's book and her expertise are helping to bring media literacy from academia down to pre-K, especially now that parents are giving access to the world to their infants, their 1-year-olds, their 2-year-olds, because really the media is access to the world. So they're allowing it to come into their home. So now I think the missing link that pre-service educators need to consider is the parent piece. So how can we support parents in becoming media literate themselves? And then that'll translate to the children. So if elementary schools and early childhood education centers or institutions were able to embrace that and sprinkle it on in across the content areas, there we go, Dr. Matson, fold in the cheese of media education, little by little, and not chunk it, it'll be more digestible and be able to be addressed across the board from pre-K through 16. So that's undergrad in my world. So we have to bring that bridge on down. We have to bring it on down, or else we're going to just collapse again into the fiery pits.
Other thoughts? I want to comment on the parent thing because I do feel like one of the reasons why parent media literacy has not been successful is because the risk harm paradigm that the pediatricians and the developmentalists and the public health people bring, right? Which is that screen time is bad, right? Actually means that, the folks the parents don't want to be in conversation about that because they don't want the guilt and the shame associated with the fact that tablets are a really useful parenting tool, right? For surviving the insanity of raising children, right? And so they stay away from opportunities to have conversations because they feel like they don't want to hear the messages about restricting screen time or, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like, so how do we set up a new paradigm that's rooted in like respect and appreciation and love for media, right? Valuing the feelings, like Katie said about the feelings, right? Valuing the fact that media gives us these strong feelings and that feelings matter to us. And we like to laugh. We like to cry. We like to be engaged through the stories that and the pleasures of media. So I don't, but I'm not really familiar with a parent approach that uses that alternative framing. And I don't even know if it could be done.
I think it could be done. I'm hopeful. Let me say that, especially with even resources like Common Sense Media, that's a staple in my professional toolbox. Where I'm creating coloring books with first and second graders about pausing and thinking when they're online as well as offline. I love to color, so I'm going to include that in my instruction. And they're kids. What kid doesn't like to color? And if they don't love to color, then we'll have another activity. But there is a way, and we have to get creative in order to pull the parents in, because digital literacy, media literacy, being multi-literate, these are tools. They are not toys. And once we start framing it as we're helping your parent toolbox, and this is how it can be done, here are some tools to use, some resources, then I think it will be a better experience with raising children in this media rich society that we're finding ourselves in.
Thanks so much for sharing, Scott.
I was just going to build on what you were saying about, I think one of the, you know better than I do, that media literacy, spreading the word has been a challenge. And I think maybe one way to try to address that is just focus on the positives. It's like to have that media literacy, that media can be wonderful. And if you can appreciate it and see what's good or what's brave, or how, even how they're, getting my attention. And then maybe then you can reflect and say, oh, is the way they're getting my and keeping my attention, is that ethical or not? And go there. But I think in media literacy, we tend to focus on misinformation, disinformation, and all this harmful stuff. And it has sometimes kind of a very negative vibe. So focusing on the positive aspects and how, like you said, can bring joy, because media brings us joy. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I've been thinking about is, could we have some kind of, I don't know, Netflix book group conversations? Almost all my great recommendations on what I'm enjoying are coming from my friends and other people who have said, have you seen Paradise? And it's like, no, why should I? And then I hear them talk and explain, and it's like, oh yeah, I think that there's media literacy opportunities there that I think we could exploit, right? That could be a playful way to acknowledge that we are kind of stuck in bubbles that sometimes interfere with finding or expanding our repertoire of pleasure. So, hey, so listen, it's 12:23. Yanti said something to me like this. He said, Renee, I said, how should I end this? I said, well, I don't know. But today at 3:00 Eastern, we have another session, and that session is really just a chance to continue the conversation with whoever shows up. But we thought maybe for that session, what we might do is like brainstorm a project that would benefit from multiple stakeholders operating in multiple geographic regions and multiple countries, because there's some research you can do on your own all by yourself, woohoo. And especially if it's a PhD, you have to do it on your own, right, Jamie? That's part of the rule. But for lots of others of us, being part of a research team is really joyful. And so we thought, well, we'll play around, right, with something that we might have fun with together. So we're going to practice being in a sandbox, generating like a preliminary draft of a research question, a preliminary draft of methods, a preliminary, process. What would it take to do this? Maybe even we see how far we get in a brainstorming process. So needless to say, I hope you come back and join us at 3:00. If not, really happy that you were part of this thing today. Really hope that you take those questions from this research jam session and use them with your own network and see where the energy is, because we do research because we don't know what we're doing, and it's a new landscape right now, right? None of us know what we're doing. As this landscape changes as dynamically as it is, we need each other to figure this stuff out. So thanks so much for joining. I'll see you guys hopefully at 3:00. If not, thanks for being part of the conversation. And we'll keep you in touch. All right, bye now.
Call you back. I'll let
Thanks, Renee.
Thanks for being part of it.
Thank you.